Greetings, my name is Temex. I play as a Shadowpriest on the Wrath of the Lich King private server Dalaran WoW. In the next few minutes you will learn how to play this unique and potent spec to its maximum. We will go over choosing your gear and stats, setting up your spec and how to melt those bosses. If anything is too fast or you need more time to read the on-screen information, feel free to pause at any time. Let's start with the strengths and weaknesses of the spec, as it is important to know what we can and can't do well, so we can play to our strengths and compensate for our weaknesses. The Shadowpriest has decent single target and huge multi-target damage on 2 or more enemies in the form of multi-dotting and his AoE spell Mindsear. As any priest, we bring a wide arsenal of buffs and support to the raiding table. The passive healing through Vampiric Embrace and the ability to off-heal is just the icing on the cake. The final talent of the Shadow Tree is called Dispersion and enables you to turn into a cloud of dark energy, reducing the damage you take by 90% for a few seconds. With talents, the cooldown on this can be as low as 1 minute and 20 seconds. This enables us to survive almost anything and stay alive longer than most classes. This is more of a personal thing, but I think the Shadowpriest rotation is pretty fun, having a perfect balance of being engaging, not too complicated, and if you do it well, you can really feel a difference in DPS. Next, let's look at the problems you will run into while playing your Shadow. As any dot-based damage dealer, we struggle with dealing a lot of damage in a short amount of time. That is due to the fact that dots make up a big chunk of our damage and dots are slow as hell. Because of this, we also suck at switching to new targets fast. It is not uncommon to see dungeon mobs die before your dots can really start doing their thing. Any Affliction Warlocks watching this video will understand the struggle. Another reason for our lack of on-demand damage is the fact that we only have one offensive cooldown, which, while restoring mana and hitting quite hard with enough spell power, does not compare to the damage cooldowns of other classes. At the end, I want to say that early on you'll run out of mana quite easily, and the spec does feel kinda slow with low haste rating, but don't lose your hope. Even with a bit of gear, you will have no mana issues at all, and the spec will feel engaging, fast and fun. Next up is the foundation of our character, stats. Spell power increases the damage of all of our offensive spells and will give, like it's for most caster DPS, the biggest damage increase per point. That, however, is only true if we hit with all of our spells. To never miss a raid boss with spells, you need 17% hit. Our talents Shadow Focus and Misery give 3% each, so we need 11% or 298 hit rating. Reaching the hit cap should always be your topmost priority. Note that any point above the hit cap is totally wasted, so try to get as close as possible without overshooting. Right after spell power comes haste. It reduces the cast and channel time of our spells, the global cooldown, and adds ticks to our dots. On the bottom left is an example stat weight table. As you can see, haste is almost up there with spell power. Get as much as you can without sacrificing spell power or hit. Note that the stat weights shown here are just for orientation and might look totally different for very low or endgame levels of gear. The other two stats beneficial for us are crit rating and spirit. Although all of our dots can crit, it is far behind spell power and haste in terms of damage increase. You will have some on your gear, but just don't worry too much about it. Spirit increases our spell power through Glyph of Shadow and various talent, but the conversion rate usually is too low to go directly for it. The first thing gems, enchants and consumables should be helping you with is reaching your caps. Afterwards, go for damage stats most beneficial for you. As our meta gem, we choose the Chaotic Skyflare Diamond. To activate it, we need to have 2 blue gems. Purified Dreadstone is the best choice here. Yellow sockets are filled with spell power and haste, the rest with just raw spell power. Your flask and buff food are pretty straightforward spell power. On the left you will find a list of the best enchants and where to get them from. For progression rating, also carry potions of speed or wild magic. You can use 1 second before the pull and 1 later into the fight. Nearly all crafting professions offer comparable boni. Just pick one you like. I roll with tailoring and inscription. For Alliance, the race of your priest doesn't really matter in terms of damage output. For Horde, Troll is by far the best because of his racial bonus berserking. Now that we got our gear set up, let's talk about the spec itself. I will not go over each talent individually, as it is more beneficial to you to read it yourself. I will however include a link to the spec in the description. The spec you see on the left side is the gold standard Shadowpriest talent build, offering maximum damage and good mana sustain. You can however swap out 2 points in Wild Shadows and put them into improved Vampiric Embrace for extra rate healing, although you will lose a bit of damage. Because Shadowword Pain should always be on your target, Glyph of Mindflay basically increases the damage of Mindflay by a flat 10%. That is extremely good, as Mindflayer is our main filler and makes up a good amount of our damage. Glyph of Shadow gives us a bunch of spell power when we crit with Mind Blast, Mind Flay or Mind Sear. Both are extremely good and should always be your first and second choice. Choosing the third glyph is up to you. You can use Glyph of Mind Sear for just a bit of extra AoE, but I use the Dispersion Glyph for extra survivability and mana in long fights. Minor glyphs don't have a lot of impact, just choose the one you like. I use Glyph of Shadow Protection and Shackle Undead, and Glyph of Levitate so I can spam it on the raid for fun without carrying a lot of feathers. Before we get to the good stuff, aka the rotation, let's briefly go over our most used abilities. I highly suggest you open your spellbook and make yourself familiar with all of the tools at our disposal. Vampiric Touch is our strongest dot and restores mana to the whole raid when you deal damage with Mind Blast. Speaking of the devil, Mind Blast is our only nuke type spell, hits quite hard and has a few seconds cooldown. Devouring Plague is a dot that can only be up on 1 target at a time. It deals a bunch of damage while leeching a bit of health to us. Thanks to the talent Improved Devouring Plague, it also deals some instant damage when you cast it. Last but not least, we have Shadowword Pain. We usually only cast it once on each enemy, as its duration is refreshed by Mind Flay with the talent Pain and Suffering. Unlike Mind Blast, Mind Flay has no cooldown, ticks a few times over 3 seconds and is the ideal filler when all of your dots are up and Mind Blast is on cooldown. Mind Sear deals heavy AoE damage around the target while also being a channel spell. While Shadow Fiend is our only and mediocre damage cooldown, Dispersion is really awesome. It helps us sustaining in long fights, surviving hard-hitting boss abilities and maximizing the time we spend casting. Remember, you can't pew-pew the boss when you are dead. Before the boss is pulled, make sure you have Inner Fire and Vampiric Embrace on you, and the whole raid or dungeon group is buffed with Prayer of Fortitude, Spirit and Shadow Protection if there is any shadow damage going out. All of the prayers need Devout Candles as a reagent to be cast. I usually carry around 100 just to be sure. The most important buff for us however is Shadow Form. This spell single-handedly makes us able to compete on the damage meters and looks freaking badass as a bonus. Just read the tooltip and you will understand. Always remember that we are potent supporters. Master Spell, Dispel and Abolish Disease should be kept tight and used if necessary. Good dispels are essential in some encounters, and your raid lead will positively notice if you use them. Although sparely used, Divine Hymn can save a raid from wiping, providing strong group heal on a long cooldown. I've seen this prevent a wipe multiple times. If your healers struggle with mana, throw them a Hymn of Hope when they call it. Let's get to the good stuff now, dealing damage. To maximize damage output, we use a priority list. Sounds complicated? Let me explain. The most important task is to keep Vampiric Touch up. If it's up, you can put Devouring Plague on the target. Shadowword Pain is special. It is refreshed by Mind Flay, as you know, but we only want to apply it if we have 5 stacks of the talent Shadow Weaving. You gain a stack of Shadow Weaving every time you deal shadow damage. So when you open up on the boss, watch out for the stacks and only apply Shadowword Pain if you have 5 stacks already. When all of our dots are ticking, our next goal is to keep Mind Blast on cooldown. meaning that we want to cast it as soon as it's up. When Mind Blast is on cooldown and all of our dots are ticking, we can use Mind Flay as a filler. Usually you can cast 2 to 3 Mind Flays in between one Mind Blast cooldown. Shadow Word Death can be used while moving, or you have a gap in your rotation that is around 1 global cooldown. Remember that it deals some damage to you, so be careful if you are low health. If you are facing multiple targets, keep Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain up on all targets, while still continuing to cast your single target rotation on the main target. If there are 4 or more enemies, just spam Mind Sear all day. Use Shadow Fiend at 60% mana and afterwards just keep it on cooldown. Although you can delay it a bit for phases of increased damage, think of Ice Hole in Trial of the Crusader. This priority can also be used as an opener. A few things are very important to keep in mind. First, always be casting. Even if you make mistakes, nothing is worse in terms of DPS than standing still. Minimize movement. If you are moving, you cannot cast, as simple as that. Last and most importantly, let your dots finish ticking. All damage over time effects deal their last bit of damage when they fade. If you reapply them when they are still up, you will lose quite some damage. You can, however, pre-cast Vampiric Touch if the remaining time is less than the cast time. Next up, I will show you what all of this means in action. I will be performing the single target rotation on a training dummy. Pay close attention to the middle of the screen, where you can see dot duration, Mind Blast cooldown and the spells I cast. Anyways, sit back and enjoy. At the end, I want to say that I highly recommend using some sort of aura tracker and a quality cast bar, as we have quite a few things to watch out for. Links to add-ons, talents, useful sites and the server I play on can be found in the description. I might upload additional guides in the future, so if you wanna stay tuned, subscribe to my channel. Remember to turn away from the light and have a good one.